What's up, Skate Athletics fam? Welcome back to another video. This week we're here to talk about mobility training, specifically how mobility can affect your skateboarding, how you can assess your own levels of mobility, and how you can improve your mobility to help prevent future injuries and to improve your overall athletic potential. How will a lack of mobility affect your skateboarding? Well, first off, research shows that a lack of ankle dorsiflexion has been associated with many different types of injuries, such as patellar tendinopathy, Achilles tendinopathy, chronic ankle instability, metatarsal stress fractures, plantar fasciitis, and anterior knee pain. Additionally, these two studies show us how a lack of hip mobility, specifically internal and external rotation, can lead to diminished athletic performance and can also lead to injuries. So right off the bat, we can tell that having a lack of mobility, either your ankles, knees, hips, spine, basically anywhere, can create some big problems. Even if you're somebody who rarely gets hurt skating and you basically never experience pain, please just beware, because these things sort of creep up and turn into long, slow building injuries that take forever to correct. For example, jumper's knee. I know we've talked about this in a previous video, but let's just do a quick review because it serves as a great example. So if you lack ankle dorsiflexion and hip internal and external rotation, your knee joint is really just going to receive all of the stress during your skate sessions. And over time, if we don't correct this, the stronger and the more overstressed your quads are going to get, which yanks on that patellar tendon, causing inflammation and tons of pain. Your range of motion will be affected. When you bend down to pop a trick, you might feel a little pinch in your knee. And of course, that's going to affect your skating. How can you assess your own mobility? Okay, so now that we all know mobility is extremely important, let me show you 4 assessments that'll help you detect any areas of restriction or tightness. First, let's start with your ankles. Here's the kneeling dorsiflexion wall test. Start by placing your foot 5 inches away from the wall. Kneel down, then push your knee forward, trying to make contact with the wall while keeping your heel flat on the ground. Refer to the checklist on the screen. What did you notice? Can your knee touch the wall while keeping your heel flat and your knee aligned correctly, aka not letting it cave in, and with no pain? If yes, you have good ankle dorsiflexion. If you can't, we got some work to do. The next test is the 90-90 layout, which will seem very familiar for you if you've done this routine. Start in this 90-90 position. Bend your right knee and externally rotate your right hip. Next, bend your left knee and internally rotate your left hip. Sit up tall, then lay down over your right leg, aiming your belly button towards your knee. Take a deep breath, then sit up tall and rotate both your hips into that opposite position. While you're rotating, your feet must stay on the ground and you can't use your hands to assist the movement. If you have no problem completing 5 reps on each side, your hip internal and external rotation is probably pretty good. If you have trouble with this, yep, you guessed it, we got some work to do. Next, let's isolate your hip internal rotation by using this internal rotation box test. Start seated on a box with your feet just off the floor. Grab a foam roller and squeeze it with your knees. Rotate your femur, pulling your foot away from the roller, while maintaining contact with both your knees and your opposite leg. Rotate your foot as far as possible and hold that position for a second. Repeat 5 times on each leg. If you're unable to reach this 45-degree angle on both sides, we have some internal rotation strength to build. And finally, let's end with a full body test using that overhead squat assessment. Start with your feet shoulder width apart. Then place a wooden dowel, PVC pipe, a hockey stick, or just your hands in the air. Now perform 5 reps of the overhead squat, trying to keep that object or your hands directly in line with your shoulders. As you squat, try to keep your feet pointed forward, your knees pressed wide, sit those hips back, try to keep that chest up and your head looking straight forward. Here are some common mistakes to note. Do your feet turn out excessively, or do you have to come up onto your toes to reach full depth? If yes, then mark down that you may have a lack of ankle dorsiflexion and most likely have tight calves and potentially underactive glutes. Do you feel your knees cave in? If yes, you most likely have tight hips, tight adductors, and underactive glutes. Are you forced to lean forward excessively? If yes, you most likely have tight hip flexors, tight psoas, and lats. Lastly, do you feel a huge shift to one side? If yes, please take note which directions your hips shift. This is a bit more complex, but for a general asymmetrical weight shift, the same side adductors and hip flexors may be tight, and your glutes and hamstrings on that opposite leg may be underactive. Please take note of any imbalance you've noticed. This is really important because this lays out exactly what we need to work on. Also, if you feel something going on that I didn't discuss, feel free to refer to this checklist and you'll find a link in the description below. Okay, so now that we've assessed our mobility, now you're going to have a little checklist of areas that you need to mobilize and stretch. But how? Let's cover a couple different types of mobility/flexibility training. Let's start with foam rolling. So right off the bat, foam rolling is going to have an indirect effect on your overall mobility because obviously the foam roller is not getting inside your joints. But foam rolling is going to have a major effect on the muscles that surround your joints. For example, if you have really tight calves and Achilles tendons, then there's literally no amount of dynamic ankle mobility that's going to help improve your ankle dorsiflexion. You need to release those calves before you can actually start to address that joint mobility. To support this, these authors even show that just foam rolling your Achilles and your calves can actually improve your ankle dorsiflexion. When you start foam rolling, it's totally fine to move around a little bit, but I really want you to focus and try to find places that feel like knots or just feel a little bit more sensitive. This is called finding that trigger point. We have these areas across our entire body, and of course they affect how we move. So find those knots. Honestly, it's going to be a little bit painful, but just try to breathe deep, relax, put your weight on that foam roller so we can finally release the muscle. The next type of mobility training are dynamic mobility exercises. These are the most common, and I'm sure you've seen a billion of these on this channel already. Dynamic mobility is great for warm-ups, accessory lifts, cool downs, honestly whenever. They're going to help so much. There are like a billion mobility exercises out there that you can use, but let's just quickly cover 3 of my favorites. The first one is the ankle, hip, hamstring rocker. Start in the split stance and try to straighten your front leg as you keep pressure on your toes. While you're here, you should feel a pretty deep hamstring stretch. If not, keep going until that front leg is straight. Hold this position for about 3 to 5 seconds, then transition into a deep hip lunge. Shift your weight forward, bring your pelvis and chest down as you press your knee wide. Here, you should feel a nice hip stretch, maybe even in your adductor and groin area, and possibly even your calf. Repeat this motion about 10 times on each side and really focus getting deep into that position. The second exercise is the deep squat with thoracic rotation. Start in your deepest squat position. If the deep squat is really challenging for you, feel free to use a heavy weight or even a pole to keep you in that position. Once you're here, try to establish that perfect squat. Feet are straight forward, knees are over the toes and pressed wide, back is straight, and your chest should be leaning forward slightly. Now release one hand, reach up to the sky as you look at your fingers. Use your other elbow to keep your knees pushing out as you keep that squat form perfect. Hold the top rotation for about 3 to 5 seconds, then transition to the other side. Let's repeat this 10 times. And the third exercise is the dynamic pigeon stretch. Start in a push-up position, then bring your shin up and place it perpendicular to your body. If you have tight hips, it's okay to keep that knee at about a 45-degree angle. Try to get your back leg as straight as possible and keep your hips facing straight forward. Sit up tall, then slowly lean forward, trying to keep your back relatively straight. Go slow, as this will place a great deal of stress on your hips and knee. Feel free to use your hands to assist the movement, but if you want to feel it really deep, just try to use that front leg as your support. Additionally, if this seems really tough, feel free to elevate that front leg. Give a quick pause when you've reached your end range of motion, then bring your chest back up to that tall pigeon position. Let's repeat this movement 10 times on each side. The third type of mobility training involves resistance bands, and these exercises are known as banded joint distractions. Once again, there are many different types of banded distractions. Just make sure you're referring back to your mobility checklist to make sure we're actually making an impact on the right area. The main purpose of the resistance band in this case is to restore some movement and some actual space inside your joint capsules. Many of your joints contain synovial fluid, and when those soft tissues, aka the muscles and the tendons surrounding the joint, are too tight, and we couple that with poor movement mechanics, basically your joint is just going to get compressed together and cause tons of problems. A good analogy I found for this situation is pretend you're putting both your fists underwater and you're going to squeeze your hand as tight as possible. You'll notice there is some water that's going to squirt out both sides of your hand. So obviously in this case, the water is a synovial fluid, and when you start to lose space in that joint, the problems will begin to occur. The structures such as the meniscus, labrum, cartilage, and even the bones may become structurally compromised and may begin to deteriorate. And when this starts to happen, basically your joints can't support your body anymore. Your joints may lose that cushion-like mechanism, and the articulating surfaces will begin to wear away. And obviously, that's not good. So as we said, there's like a billion of these, but I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite, and which I think are going to be the most common for skaters. So if you lack ankle dorsiflexion, try the banded ankle distraction. Place a thin band just below your ankle joint. Elevate that front foot so that band is really pulling down into the joint. Press your knee forward into that deep lunge position, trying to keep your foot flat and your heel connected to the bench. Press your knee as far forward as possible and out at a 45-degree angle. Hold that end range of motion for a quick second, then press out of the position. We're going to repeat this about 10 to 15 times on each side. You may feel some tightness in that front side of the joint, but that's the whole point. We're just going to create a little more space in that ankle joint. If the pain is super gnarly, try the same motion, just without the band. If you lack hip internal and external rotation, try the banded hip distraction. Place a thick resistance band just below your hip joint. Elevate your front foot and come back into that deep lunge position. Make sure you're slightly angled away from the pole at roughly 45 degrees. This will ensure we're going to actually create space into that hip joint. Start by pressing your knee wide as possible while maintaining your solid foot position. Here, you'll feel a pretty gnarly stretch in that adductor/hip. Hold this externally rotated position for about 3 seconds, then press your knee across your body into internal rotation. Go slowly while doing this motion, and you'll feel a pinch at the front of your hip. Don't force it too far, as this should already provide a pretty deep internal rotation stretch. Repeat this motion about 10 times on each leg. And if you experience just general hip tightness and basically tightness everywhere, try the banded couch stretch with a psoas reach. Start facing the pole and place the band just below your hip joint. Drop your knee on something soft and use basically anything to elevate your back leg. Face your hips forward, then press your hip into this vertical position. Squeeze your butt cheek on that bent leg and you'll feel a pretty deep stretch in your hip/quad. From here, reach your hand up and across your body while maintaining tension in your glute. Your psoas is a hip flexor that runs close to your abs, so don't be alarmed if you feel your abs begin to stretch. Hold this static position and focus on your breath. Try to relax, which is easier said than done. If this feels too gnarly, feel free to release your hand and just stretch that front side of your hip. Just make sure that glute stays squeezed. Let's hold the couch stretch for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. And the last thing to talk about is static flexibility. So just like foam rolling, this is going to have an indirect on your joint mobility. However, it plays a big part. Just remember, if your muscles are super tight, your joints aren't going to move very well. So here are 3 very easy static flexibility exercises you can use. Start with a standing calf stretch. Start by placing your elbows or hands on a wall. Step 1 foot back, making sure that foot stays straight and your heel stays flat on the floor. Personally, I like to apply a little pressure on that heel just to make sure it stays down. From there, just lean forward and you'll feel a great stretch in your calf. If you want to try a little deeper stretch, find something to stand on like a squat rack or even just a stair. Hang your heel off the step and lean forward. This one will for sure give you a great stretch. Let's hold this position for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. Next, let's open up our hips using the frog stretch. Start in a kneeling position. Drop to your hands, then widen your knees as far as you can, keeping them bent at a 90-degree angle. Keep your feet directly behind your knees, externally rotate at the ankles, and keep your ankle at that same 90-degree position. Now, sit your butt back a bit, and you're going to feel a pretty gnarly stretch in those hips. If you want to progress this, you can either drop to your elbows or this child's pose position. Don't force yourself into this position if you feel really tight. Just do your best and make sure you're able to relax. Let's hold this for 1 to 2 minutes. And for the last one, let's show you a new one, the kneeling adductor stretch. Start on one knee, then straighten your opposite leg directly out to the side. On that extended leg, keep your foot pointed straight forward and make sure the sole of your foot stays flat on the ground. Start to lean back slowly as you press that extended foot into the ground. Now you should feel a stretch run through the inside of your leg, aka your groin/adductor muscles. Just like the frog stretch, don't force this position. Just sit back as far as you can and make sure you can relax. Let's hold this for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. Alright, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's topic, and I hope I can offer some information that's going to be useful for you to bring back into the gym to help your skating. If you want any extra mobility exercises or recommendations, hit me up by either leaving a comment below or shoot me a DM on my Instagram, SkateAthletics. If you like this week's video, please hit that like button to show your support and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. I'll see y'all later on Skate Athletics.